Folks, we're still expecting a couple of people, but it's 10 o'clock and we have a quorum, so we can get started and then get out as soon as we can, so that Ralph can make his lunch date, right?
You got it.
I can make my massage? There we go.
Yes.
All set. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for being here. Just a reminder, in my big print, I just want to show everybody so I can read it. Thanks, Elizabeth. Board members, staff, guests, and members of the public are reminded that the full authority board committee meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the authority's website, along with the official written minutes. As such, comments and opinions expressed may be published, and any comments expressed by individual board members, guests, and the general public are their own and do not represent the opinions or comments of the full authority and/or the KCCA Board of Directors. The recorded video of the full authority meeting is not considered the official record of that meeting. The official record of the full authority meeting shall consist solely of the minutes approved by the full authority. Okay, so do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest for anything today? Seeing none, excellent. So let's take a look at our meeting minutes of the last meeting on May 15th. You've had a chance to take a look at them. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, I need a motion to accept the minutes as printed. Dominique, seconded by Joe. All in favor? Thank you, carried. Okay. So, matters arising. The June media report.
Mr. Chair, just before we get into that, I would mention to members that they do have an updated agenda in front of them, which adds a closed session item, property matter.
Oh, okay, sorry.
The agenda, just making that note.
Just the whole bowl.
Sorry if I mentioned that.
Next. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So just take a bit of a second here, let me do that. Morning, Linda.
More.
How are you?
Being bang.
Want me to move this one out of the way?
Who's sitting here?
You are.
Yes.
Oh, wait, somebody else here?
No, it's just myself.
We're just trying to bypass you, Linda.
It's a little bit low.
All right, can you come this way? I don't want to hit the camera, so. I'm just gonna try and put it over there. There we go.
Sorry, it takes me a while, folks.
That's okay. It's great to have you here.
You're in.
Excellent, okay, so we've gotten to the June media report.
Mr. Chair, there was a number of items that were forwarded out in your package. One thing to highlight, we did go out with a news release, early, I guess it was last week, in regards to the high lake levels down in Port Stanley. So Port Stanley is now currently under a flood watch. The great thing was to see the uptake, especially on social media for that. I think, Marion, can you read the number? It was like 13,000.
No, we're actually 15.
15,000 in
Wow.
terms of people's eyes on that. So just evident of the amount of people and I guess the timing of that news release was good. In the fact that we're looking at the summer season down in Port, so it's a great chance to remind people of the lake levels down there. Lots of good social media as well in terms of our events and activities in the campgrounds. One example is the Learn to Fish program that's coming up. Those different events are also getting lots of uptake on social media as well. And there's the high lake levels flood warning stories that were picked up because of the news release as well. One thing that in conversations with the municipality of Central Elgin, we will be holding an information session for the Village of Port Stanley this coming Tuesday on June 25th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And this is just a chance again for us to share the information that we currently have on the lake levels and share with the community down in Port what they should be monitoring over the next season in terms of lake levels and specifically storm surge. The municipality will be joining with us at that information session, but we also hope that it's a chance for the public to share with us their information, their pictures, and their day-to-day knowledge of what's happening with these lake levels. It is historic, and so it's great to get pictures from the public in terms of their documentation. Joe and I have witnessed it for ourselves, being down there at 8 or 9 in the morning and seeing the lake levels very high in Port, and then going back down at 3 in the afternoon, and they've dropped 6 or 8 inches just in that amount of time. So there's lots of information that's stored by the local marina owners and pictures that we want so that we have a historic record of what's happening down there.
So is this session a formal presentation, or is it more an open house kind of thing?
It'll be a mixture. I think we have a formal presentation that we want to share with the public in terms of how we calculate storm surge and what we're looking for, the winds setup that we would be concerned about with these lake levels, but then opening it up for any questions that Port residents have.
Any questions from the board at all, as far as that? I think that's a great idea. Any chance we can get and educate them, of course, is wonderful.
Just want
Yeah?
to just thank the board for organizing this to the municipality, so thank you.
Excellent, good, well, I think it's a serious situation, right? It can be much more serious, right, depending on how the weather turns, so, excellent, thank you. Okay, so, receive the media report. Linda and Ralph, all in favor? Thank you, carried. Okay, so project tracking.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask Betsy to report on a couple of things in project tracking.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good news for us, we were successful in our application to the Eco Action Community Funding Program. So we were successful in receiving $49,000 over 3 years, largely for wetland creation within our watershed. So the majority of the funds will go to the creation of the wetlands, but also some adjacent habitat, tree planting, tall grass prairie, again, adjacent to the wetlands. So that's great news for us.
And that's federal money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another piece is we've had a number of great volunteer tree planting events over the last month or so. We partnered with the Elgin Trappers, the YWCA's Newcomer Youth Group. We had classes from Central Elgin Collegiate and the Elgin Eco classes, which are a group of grade 7 and 8 classes, all come out. So I think upwards of 4,000 trees we planted in partnership with community groups this spring. So, and lastly, the Kettle Creek Environmental Youth Corps is up and running, and we had our first event on June 1st, and they came out and planted roughly 200 shrubs along the north shore of Lake Margaret in St. Thomas. So those events with those youth will keep continuing throughout the summer.
Okay, excellent. Linda?
Just on that particular one, it would be nice if, through this board, if we sent a letter of thanks to that youth court for the hard work that they did. I think it would just be a nice recognition for young people, anywhere where the board can be positive and reinforcement.
Absolutely.
I think it would be nice. So, Chair, if you would be so kind,
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that would be something nice to do.
Okay, you get that done. Okay, great, wonderful. Anything else on the project tracking at all from anyone else? Okay, seeing none, let's receive this report. Anyone? Bill and Dennis, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, watershed conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a reminder again that a flood watch was issued for the Lake Erie shoreline on June 11th. due specifically to the record high water levels in Lake Erie. We've broken the record set in 1986, which is 7 centimeters above that currently as of June 6th. Those were the results from then. So pretty historic situation, which again is why we're.
Okay, no, a question from Linda.
Just on the erosion piece, did we have any substantial damage in any of the areas that might have been fragile? I know along Cow Creek, we've been doing some work along there on the trail and all those kinds of things. Did we have any damage that is going to cause us some grief? I hate to see the trails and things like that closed again, that's all.
Mr. Chair, we haven't had any reports, and staff have been out on the trails. Especially the trail that we recreated from Dan Patterson
Right.
and through Dealwood, it was built sustainably, so it's directed away from those problem areas.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's good to hear. Thank you.
And during the last couple of weeks where we've been monitoring what's been happening down at the shoreline, I've had a chance to talk to a lot of some marina owners. I've talked to the owners at Mackey's, if they've noticed any issues, and so far so good, no problems, no flooding.
Mackey's was underwater for a little bit.
They said they had no water inside. It was
Wow.
it was just on the outside on the roadway, and that was just from
They're
the water
looking for
trying to
property
get
a little
through.
closer.
Yeah.
Jen, can I ask you,
Yes.
what are the parameters for issuing a flood watch, per se?
So that's a great question. We have 4 levels of media releases. So a water safety, which is usually directed towards, there could be conditions like slippery banks or fast flowing water, that sort of thing. A flood outlook is sort of the next step, where there's conditions that could be conducive to some sort of flood event, usually riverine flooding. The next level is flood watch, which is where there's a heightened sense of condition, which is what this is currently, which means that the water levels are so high right now that this is something in our protocol that once the water levels reach a certain point, which is 175 meters above chart datum, that we are constantly in a state of watch, because if the winds come from a certain direction, in our case it's usually north or southwest, at a sustained speed of 50 kilometers an hour or greater, then that is conducive potential for storm surge. So that's why we've put out this watch. We want people to be constantly aware that these conditions exist.
But it's not imminent.
It's not imminent.
Okay.
For example, today when I checked the weather, the marine forecast right now is like first thing that I check in the morning. Winds are from the northeast, and they're sustained at 10 knots, which is about 7 kilometers an hour. So no concerns today. But it's something that we want people to be constantly aware of right now, because with the water level so high, typically they do decrease over June and July. That's typical for Lake Erie. But we are going to have heightened water levels probably for the rest of the season, which is again why we're also involving the public in this public information session. We want people to be aware of what we do and what the situation is, but we also want to get feedback from the public.
Okay, okay. And so then the 4th level is it a
A
flood
warning, flood warning.
Is
That's
it-
when everything's happening,
Yeah.
and that's when all hands on deck and constantly checking. So we're not at that red stage yet.
And so when we have a flood warning, then is that where you contact a person like Joe or whoever in the municipal government and you coordinate efforts that way?
Yeah, we usually, before that stage happens, we're in
So we're
contact, we're getting ready, in contact with the municipal representative. We're talking, working, so for example, during an ice jam, for example, like we would have already had those conversations. Are we going to have like a breaker in place? Are we going to have, what is the emergency plan? Is your plan up to date? Talking with EMS and fire, and making sure that all those things are in place for that eventuality. And then once the warning happens, everyone is aware ahead of time, it goes out, and then we're on to that next stage of monitoring, keeping an eye on what's happening, constantly updating, talking back and forth with the municipality, making sure that, there's always someone observing.
And so is there a, sorry to take your time, but is there a public communication piece other than the website to say to people, we have a flood warning or we have a flood watch?
So
Is
we,
there, is it
sorry.
posted anyplace at all?
So we post all of our media releases on social media.
All right.
Yeah, and all of it is on our website. All of our releases go out to a huge mail list of all media outlets, so print, radio, TV, everything that's in our area that could receive that gets it, as well as EMS, schools, fire, all of those departments. So everyone, as well as the government, so like we have local CAs get it. We have a huge email list of people that gets things.
Do we utilize like municipal signage, for example? That kind of stuff, like the sign outside the arena? Do we put flood warning or flood watch or anything like that up on those in conjunction with that? Because there are people out there who don't subscribe to Twitter, don't subscribe to Facebook, and I know like back in my municipal days, that's one of the things was that the physical signage was, I didn't see it posted anywhere. You say, well, it's all over the place, right? I just wondered whether we do that at all?
That would be a municipal initiative, so
Okay.
if that's something that the
I
municipal.
think depending on what the warning is, the municipality would make the decision that if there all of a sudden you're in a flood situation, then I would see. If there's the availability for the municipality to get the word to more people, then that would happen.
And we put signage up and signals.
Yeah, I was just thinking like the public safety.
Yeah, I think the other thing to remember, once you get into the flood warning, the authority also keeps a list of the people that are living within flood damaged areas. And
So they're
the
getting
municipality
more
has
physical
access to
contact,
that, so if we're getting to that stage, then there's actual physical contact with those
Mhm.
people.
Okay,
Yeah, great.
thank you.
And there's also the Voyant alert system that I'm meeting with a Central Alberta Fire representative next week to see how we can use that system to release the high-level
Right.
watches and warnings or warnings to the public in a more, like, I don't think it's quite like the Amber Alert where it wakes you up at any time, but, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it has stages, yes.
Yes, but that's something else that we're looking at to see if that's another way to get the message out.
Okay, Ralph, you had a question?
Well, I was just a point of curiosity. Are we in a provincial high because we're hearing floodings, all the way from up north to the Ottawa area and so on? Is this a year in which we've got a high water level province-wide?
Yeah, just everywhere, like there's absolutely no low water situation anywhere. Everyone is experiencing high water levels. The season up north was quite late for melt, and they were still having ice jams in May, so it's just a really, really wet year so far, and it doesn't, so far with the 3-month forecast that I received at the beginning of the month for up till July, they're saying, I believe a normal temperature and normal precipitation for the season, but we don't know that for sure.
So this information that we're just talking about will come out in your public information session, right?
Correct, yes. Yeah. So that, of course, is the big story for the watershed conditions this month. And we'll be having a public information session. Sorry, I wrote 5:30 to 7:30 on there. I apologize, it should say 5:30 to 7. So we will be attending on site for that. And just a small little happy bonus for myself and the authority is that we were able to receive another funding grant from DFO to continue the drainage classification work that we've been doing since 2016, which is really great. So just a couple of pictures from June 13th. This is the municipal boat launch down near Hoffless Park. It is there, I assure you.
And just a note on that, we had actually added a foot to the dock.
Yeah.
We built up a foot, so
Yeah.
it is
Yeah,
accessible.
it has a wooden speedboat right now.
You're gonna swim out to the boat launch.
When I was down there, I was watching a couple of gentlemen trying to unload and reload their jet ski. And it was interesting.
Video, please.
No, there was a little language in it. This is Lions Landing Marina, the next day, June 14th. So their docks are kind of at the highest point, and they're adding extra levels to them just to get in and out. Some boat owners were saying their feet were getting wet. It didn't really bother them too much. There was other parts of the marina where they said it wasn't bothering them at all, and they were fine. So just some areas are a little lower than others. Main Beach on June 14th. This was a day where the wind was at about 20 knots, which is about like 30-ish kilometers an hour. So the waves, and this was the only spot really where there was water near tower number 1.
But that was onshore breeze, onshore wind?
Yeah. So it was still, I had little sticks out there. I was measuring where it was and where it was going. So it wasn't too bad. The kiteboarders were really enjoying it.
Yeah.
So, that's it. Any other questions?
Thank you very much. Well done. Okay, so let's receive that report, please, folks. Motion, Joe, seconder. Dennis, all in favor? Thank you. Next on our agenda, the good old IT and internet services.
Mr. Chair, so this is an update from last month. I did go out and successfully got a third quote for internet services, and that was included on the front end of that report on page 29. So Execulum is what we currently are with 5 megs up and 3 megs down for a rate of $399 a month.
Never heard.
Flood watch.
And Uplink is the services that staff is recommending that we go with. And you can see the 50 megs up, 20 megs down for $300 a month. This includes the opportunity to establish Wi-Fi at the campgrounds with some additional capital in terms of towers. And this would allow us to recoup some of those costs by offering the campers Wi-Fi access. And so virtually, eventually, we put that in place, we would have a way to offset this cost. Integris was the third quote that I got for comparison purposes. And you can see they offer the 20 megs up and 20 megs down for $125 a month. Now the caveat is that they would not, they don't have the capabilities of offering services at Lake Whitaker. And Dalewood, they weren't sure. It would depend on a tower installation to get it above the trees. And they also believe that a tower would be required at the head office for that to get a strong enough signal. And he was out and tried to do a signal strength from the office and said at the time that it was weak without a tower. So based on those comparisons, I still believe that the motion presented to you last month is the motion that I would recommend to the board, and that is to proceed with Genesis in terms of IT management and Uplink for the high-speed internet services. Although the high-speed internet services would take immediately effect at the office, and we would be looking at introducing them at Dalewood and Lake Whitaker within the 2020 budget, just because of the capital costs involved in that.
Okay, questions? Linda?
Just how many months is that one for, Elizabeth, the uplink?
Is that a 12-month quote?
It was 12 months, I believe.
Sorry, I might have missed it.
Year-
I might have missed it.
It would be my initial to go in with a year contract with him,
Okay.
I believe.
It would be nice to do that. I know Integris is still working on a lot of their equipment in the area, and I'd be interested in hearing, say, a couple of years down the road, how competitive they might be. So it's always worth a shot. I don't like to get tied into things too
There are
much.
some times to be the first one in, and
Yep.
sometimes not to be the first one in.
Right.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, any other, yeah, Bill?
Mr. Chair, probably Joe, do you predict a big interest in campgrounds for the Wi-Fi? I think maybe Mary Ann or Elizabeth can speak to that, if there was a public survey that had gone out to try and get some feedback from the campers. I don't know what the stats of the results.
So, Mr. Chair, we currently have a user survey out in campgrounds, specifically designed for our campgrounds as well as our users of our hiking trails. But we added a couple of questions in terms of would they be interested in Wi-Fi services and at the prices that Uplink is suggesting. I think we haven't closed the survey, but early results is, I think there was 8 respondents and it was about 50-50 in terms of interest and leaning towards the higher package that Uplink suggested. So I think, even if we got 20 or I think it was 20 or 30 campers at each one doing the higher package, we're covering our costs.
So like provides
So we don't-
bundle packages too, do they?
It was like you can go like a daily package, a monthly package,
Okay.
and at different levels.
Joe? Yeah, so at what point, how many people do we have to say, yeah, I would like to have Wi-Fi to cover the complete cost? Or is part of this complete cost for our purposes, not just for users of the campsite?
That's right. Part of the whole cost would be basically for our use.
For us, and we'll let them tag on, we'll make
We're
some.
letting them tag on and cover our costs.
I feel better with that thought.
Like, I think of the whole issue of Wi-Fi now. And whether you go into a hotel or a public building or a McDonald's, everyone looks for, maybe not us, but people younger than us in a different generation all look for Wi-Fi.
Right.
And should we have a few people tag along,
Right.
it's not gonna take long before those on the periphery go, for $5 a month or $10 a month or whatever, it's worth it.
But Stephen, in most of those, including especially the hotels, it's now built into the cost.
Yeah.
It's not a known, I've got to sign up and it costs me
Yeah.
so much,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And will we be looking forward to that from a rental point of view? It just is part of the cost.
As part of the whole, transition from one to the other,
Right.
I would certainly see that as being, something that, 10 years down the road kind of thing. Right? As
You're right,
part of your
Joe.
seasonal.
They advertise free Wi-Fi, but you're right, it's built in. You're
Right.
paying for it.
Hey, I've got Wi-Fi at Wendy's, it's built into the price of the burgers.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hey, I didn't want to know that.
okay, so come in, show me you're stepping on your phone and I'll give you the 3 cents
I
back.
just drive through.
Yeah, like I'm in the bus business, and when people get on the bus, the first thing they ask for is the Wi-Fi password.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's just now, it's table stakes.
Yeah.
I don't know why I might keep my iPad when I'm camping, but I might want to Google snake bites or something, so I guess I didn't want
Ooh, yeah.
to. Thought of another reason.
Good deal. There you go. Okay, excellent.
Please put your credit card in before the information.
Any other questions at all about this? Okay, folks, so I think we're looking for someone to receive, well, no, more than that, we have a recommendation
Move that we recommend.
to move the Genesis becomes the IT management and maintenance people, and that Uplink is contracted to do the high-speed internet.
I'll move it.
Linda? And Bill, any other comments at all? Okay, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you for getting that third quote.
That's great. Okay. Bill 108.
So, Mr. Chair, most of you probably are aware that Bill 108 was passed on June 6th, including the schedule that pertains to the conservation authorities. As outlined in your advanced report, Conservation Ontario did a fair bit of lobbying and was able to present to the Standing Committee on Justice, promoting the importance of conservation authorities, especially in protecting the function and resilience of natural resources. So as you recall, in House Bill 108, Schedule 2 was originally presented. The CAs were concerned that our natural resource management side of our programs and services was missing. And so Conservation Ontario lobbied to have that recognized as a core mandate. There is basically, I would describe it, and CO is describing it as well, as a partial win, in that the final bill that was passed added a program at the bottom, and I apologize, apologize for the size of the print on the screen, but it is in your advanced package and it was highlighted. So in addition, it added a program or service other than a program or service described in paragraph 1 that has been described by the regulations on or before the first anniversary of the day prescribed under clause 43. So basically, as I read it, it's a new category that they've added in, and I think it buys time in terms of to decide other programs and services that might be added into that regulation. So ultimately, what we end up is the amendments to the CA Act define 3 terms of programs and services that CAs can deliver. Those are mandatory programs and services, so prescribed in the regulation, and we know that right now is hazard management, source water protection, and the Lake Erie conservation lands, and the Lake Simcoe regulation. The other one will be municipal programs and services, so individual municipal MOUs or agreements, and if you think of what we have existing, to me, one example would be the dog park. So we have a specific agreement with the City of St. Thomas and Central Alden to be offering those services. And then the other one is other programs and services or non-mandatory as determined by the CA board. And we can only use municipal levy on those programs and services if we have an established agreement with the member municipalities. So moving ahead in terms of Bill 108 and the Conservation Authorities Act amendments, over the summer we can expect hopefully consultation with CAs on what is included in terms of these mandatory programs and services. We expect some standards and requirements coming out from the province in terms of what our mandatory programs and services are. There is a prescribed transition plan that we'll have to be undertaking again, but what that looks like, we haven't been fully informed of yet or consulted on. So we're hoping that will happen over these summer months. And this is where we'll really have to work at aligning the CA and municipal budgets with these types of programs and services. So looking at what's mandatory, what is municipal levy being directed in, what are the other programs that we need municipal agreements with. Once those regulations are put in place, that transition plan is established, then we'll have 18 to 24 months to work through that. And so right now the speculation is if the government pushes through this in the summer, and that we would have new regulations and sections enacted before year end, we're probably looking at full compliance either January 2020 to 21 or January 2020 to December 22. It all really depends on what transition period they establish, the 18 or the 24 months.
So they're establishing the transition period, we have no say in that.
We're suggesting and advocating for
In all reality, we have no say.
But no, once those regulations are established, then it will be, the clock starts ticking in terms of our compliance, and that the level of, the period of compliance will be determined by them as well.
Okay.
But we're certainly advocating for a longer transition period. We'll also be looking at new municipal regulations, and I think I've mentioned before, a new fees, probably a new fee policy regulation as well. So certainly, again, we're in a period of transition. I wish I could give more information, but we've seen so far things moving fairly rapidly. And certainly when, my next couple of reports are on 4-year budgets and budgets moving forward, certainly coming to getting the government to narrow down what these mandatory programs and services are, the new regulations, that only helps us, get a better perspective in terms of moving ahead with our budget.
Linda, question?
So Bill 108 still has a number of unknown factors. And as the information is released, and there will be, I'm sure, a time period where things aren't quite on schedule or whatever, but an analysis coming back from staff as to what those differences might look like would be appreciated. And I know that's a lot of work, Elizabeth, but, you know, when we hear information that talks about fees, talks about programs, whether they're going to be added to or deleted, those kinds of things, the impact that it's going to have on the conservation would be greatly appreciated. I know that you're usually on top of it. Have we heard anything on the tree planting exercise? I know they cut out the, in the first initial load, they weren't doing the trees anymore. But have we heard anything different on that particular thing? And if so, if it's still cut, is there a way for us to manage it so that we are still doing some of that activity? Because I still see it as a core essential service for conservation areas, and I am troubled by that one. So there was a lot in that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll start with the one that I can answer. I feel like I've got an answer ready for it. The tree planting program. So the federal government came in and rescued the 50 million tree program. We haven't heard the details on what that looks like specifically for us, other than to hear that the federal government has committed funds to that. In terms of the longevity of the tree planting program, I think that you would hear staff vehemently echo that is a core program and service of ours. It's part of that natural resource management. It's the first line of defense in terms of climate change. It's a good mitigation factor in terms of our flood hazards and erosion and all of those things. So staff will be working diligently to ensure that program remains in place. It is positive right now in that we have our Ontario Power Generation grant. That provides a source of funding for that program. It looks favorable in terms of the federal government coming in with those funds, but we also know there's an election coming up federally as well.
Mm-hmm.
So bringing back around to having me provide you with analysis of where Bill 108 is going to land us, or how it's ultimately going to affect us. I don't, as much as I want to provide that information with you, I don't feel that I have enough information to do that at this point. I think what I presented in the package today in terms of trying to lay out moving forward in terms of budgeting and those things are the information that I have today, and
So forgive me, I wasn't suggesting that you give us an analysis of everything that's happening today. I would see it as an ongoing thing as you receive information.
Yes.
So my apologies if I didn't sort of clarify.
Yeah.
So as information's coming out, that's when I want to hear, did a program stay, did it get cut, those kinds of things. I'm not looking for a big report today, but certainly to know and understand. Yeah. So my apologies. I worry about some of our core features, that's all. You know, the tree planting was one of them, but certainly we do other things, and our staff is amazing at it. There are things that we do in the community that I think are some of our core things that even the community has expectations that it's going to be in place. So, you know, I was happy to hear about things like the dog park and things like that, but there are other pieces that certainly there's an expectation from our community on these things.
I was just going to say, I think it's incumbent on us as board members, though, to make sure we're out there beating the bushes and telling people about the wonderful things we do. We've never been in the habit of doing that in the past, because we've just assumed that people knew what we did. But I think it's come down to where we need to go out and say, hey, did you realize that we plant trees all over the place? You know, the people that you see putting trees in places?
Well, forgive me, Chair, but I do see our media release. I mean, we're getting a lot of hits on our media release now. To bump it up, I would agree, but I have to say the staff have been doing a very good job of getting information out at this point. And certainly some of the activities that we've had in fundraising and things like that are very well known in the area. So you're right, we could do more.
Well, I think at the municipal level, like when you go back to the people you're representing.
Right.
You know, I talked to councillors in London, for example. You know, they know we exist, they think we do a wonderful job, but they really and truly don't understand what we do.
They have traffic problems.
Yeah, so anyway, so those are the kinds of things, and, you know,
Sorry.
the place that I represent, Middlesex Centre, you know, we have 5 different CAs that touch our municipality, and each one is unique, and yet, in general, we have certain roles, right? And I think it's important that we go back and educate them as well. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and certainly I know at the St. Thomas council meetings, we bring it up. As a matter of fact, we passed the last letter as a sign of support. It's a little late, but it is when it came to us, and so it was what it is. Anytime Elizabeth or staff have something, we tend to bring it up during that time. And we are on a repeater on Rogers and a couple of other media stations. So we are doing that, but if you've got other suggestions as well, I know Joe and I are more than happy to speak about them.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Great, any other questions or comments about it? Okay, so this is for information purposes?
Yes.
So we need to receive this. Joe and Linda, all in favor? Thank you, okay. Correspondence.
Mr. Chair, I have no additional correspondence other than the pieces that went out. I did want to just highlight the Trappers, the Sean Meehan Elmer District Trappers Council appreciation of KCCA, and it kind of picks up on the topic that Linda was just saying, that evidence of the good things that the authority does, and it's always nice to see appreciation recognized in the community.
Yes, I read that, and that was very nice to see that. Congratulations to everyone involved, and I think that's wonderful. It's nice to get that correspondence back from the entities in which we represent too, right? And to know that our message is actually going out there and being received, and people are responding, so I think that's important. So excellent. And the Warden's Golf Tournament is fun too, so if anyone's looking for something to do that day. Okay, with that in mind, do we need to receive all the correspondence in general?
Please.
Okay, so we need to receive all of our correspondence. Bill? Dennis? All in favor? Thank you. New business. Employee Assistance Program.
Mr. Chair, so I received word earlier in late May that VIA would cease operations as of June 30th, 2019. And as I'm aware, some of the member municipalities are dealing with this as well. I immediately reached out to our benefits provider, because as a member of Conservation Ontario's Group Benefits Program, there is an employee assistance program as part of that package, and that's the price that you see from ComSite at $2.09 per employee. LEAC, we were paying $2.52 per employee, so there's a cost savings in terms of going with ComSite. I did try to go out and get, even though ComSite is part of a competitive bidding process through the Conservation Ontario's Group Benefits Program, they go out to market on a regular basis. So you should be rest assured that that's a very competitive price with ComSite. I did go out and try to get other quotes locally. Sheppel and Homewood, I did not have a response from them. Homewood, there was simply no response. Sheppel, I've been getting the runaround between phoning and email inquiries, and don't seem to be getting anywhere. Family Services is a local program out of London. I've talked with them a couple of times. They are, like LEAC, they're in a little bit of a transition phase, and so it took them a while to get me a price, but I did receive it late yesterday afternoon. And it is significantly higher at $250 a month, $100 per hour of counseling for employees, and that it's capped at 8 hours per employee, whereas you'd see with ComSite that it's unlimited. And it goes beyond just counseling services. The full services were outlined within the advanced package and include everything from work-life services to counseling to financial assistance, and even to some legal support and resources that they can reach out to. So I feel fairly confident that you're getting a good price from ComSite and a very comprehensive service as well.
Where are they based? Do they have service like?
They have,
so
they
if
have.
someone needed to go
Yeah.
to seek service, they could get it in London or something?
Sorry, it works a little bit different than LEAC. LEAC, you reached out and the service provider was immediately local. ComSite has like a call center that you would reach out to, but they direct you. There are branches in London.
They do have one in London.
Yeah.
Just as a point of interest, I noticed you have Homewood on there. Did you have somebody in particular you contacted, or how long ago did you contact them?
I've been trying to contact them since I found out the app was closing,
Which is
like a month.
a month. Okay, because I could give you a contact person of Homewood if you wish to pursue that one at all.
I'm pretty confident that you're getting a good price in ComSite.
Okay.
If the board wishes me to pursue that, maybe I can, but
Is this not something as well that you can do it for a year and see how it goes?
certainly.
Sure. And then if it needs to be replaced, it could be, right?
Sure, absolutely. I'm not promoting it, but I'm just saying I do have a contact in Homewood that I'm sure you could get a response from.
Seems to be a pretty good price, I think. So,
You need a mover?
yes, we need a motion.
So I'll move that,
Moved by
please.
Linda, seconded by Joe. Any other comments or all questions? That's pretty clear. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, Dale Wood.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So recently, we've been working on the RFP for work for the Dalewood Dam. We did submit a WEC application for that in March, I believe. And we received word last week that our WEC application was denied. So that makes our budget $50,000 as what was put in the 2019 budget. We had 7 consultants attend with us on site for the mandatory site meeting in May. We received 5 proposals after the closing, or sorry, for the closing date of June 7th. And the proposals were analyzed by the general manager, myself, and the assistant manager. And looking at all of the proposals were technically strong. However, GHD was technically strong, but used really good data that was already available, as well as could be scoped for other items that we were interested in. For example, the geotechnical could be looked at, as well as a safety proposal for the dam. And it kept everything under the $50,000 budget. Could you just forward? Here's the table of the 5 proposals that we received. All of the proposals made the cutoff point for opening the financial proposal. And you can see the total scores there. The scope, we looked at the full scope that we asked for in the RFP. And some of the proposals looked at different options of ways that they could arrange the items that we were interested in. And as you can see, that GHD did make the top of the score. And that's where we're at.
Okay, question? Linda?
I'm pleased to hear that we could actually complement it by adding other things on top of it. Do you have any indication of things you might include, or we could go after perhaps at maybe pretty close to the same time?
So the price for the scope of the HPC, which is what we were most interested in, came under just at $35,000, I believe. Is it And then the two things that we were most interested in that we added were the geotechnical, which was looking at the berms, which is part of the dam. So they would have a geotechnical engineer come and assess them, and then that would determine whether or not any invasive work would have to be done, for example, boreholes or that sort of thing. So they would be able to make that determination. And as well, some of those things wouldn't be required if the dam is not assessed at high. So if it's less than high, then some of those things wouldn't even be necessary, which would mean that the price would be less.
Right.
So looking at the geotechnical evaluation as well as a safety plan, so that's looking at things like, do we need to have additional fencing or signage or booms or any of those things, especially with regards to the new bridge being in place. So that's something else that they can look at, and that still brings the price to only $39,000, which is still below our $50,000 budget.
Right.
Joe, you have questions?
Yeah, I don't know enough about this, but I thank you for finding someone who can do what we want to do for under the budget. We originally went out for a grant for it, from who?
WECI, which is the Water Erosion Control and Infrastructure Program, which is a 50-50 cost share through the MNRF.
Right.
It is something that we've applied to many times in the past. It's just this time
Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
we were unsuccessful.
Is what we're asking to do a must-do or a need to do over a period of time, or would be great to do?
So the hazard potential classification it's a best management practice.
Right.
So it is very important as dam owners and operators that we are.
Quit calling us that, no.
So that we're working with our structures in the best way possible
Right.
for the safety of the public. So that it's very important that we have this information moving forward, because this will dictate how we potentially spend our money in the future. How are we best able to spend that money to get the best bang for our buck? There may be repairs that we have to do in the future or changes that we have to make, and this HPC is a critical cornerstone of that information moving forward.
Okay, so you said critical cornerstone, so it's a must-do.
It's,
I think, Mr. Chair, if I may, I think if you want to be good dam managers, it's a must.
Okay.
yeah.
Great. So I'm just suggesting we're in a year certainly of fiscal uncertainty with where Bill 108 is taking us. Is this something we should put off till we know what the budget actually is? Or is this a must-do and we actually have it in our budget? So I'm not saying, we approved the budget as is, right? So that's my question.
This sounds like taking your car in for a winter checkup before winter arrives,
Right.
right?
And
So
if
that
there wasn't food in the fridge, I wouldn't take the car in that year.
Right.
So, I'm just saying that,
Mr. Chair.
where are we on this?
If I can
Yeah.
simplify it, I guess, in my terms. Without the HPC, basically, we have a list of things that we think we should do to the dam. And we could proceed to do that, but we would be spending money kind of unknowingly. If we get the HPC done and it's rated high, that's going to dictate what we have to do in the future to be good dam managers. If it's rated low, then that de-escalates in terms of the type of management that we have to do on that dam.
So this may be a money saving or a
This may-
prediction of saving money.
I look at as it's a good method to go to really inform the process moving forward in terms of what maintenance we have to do on that dam.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking at. Thank you.
Any other questions at all? Jen, anything else you wanted to add?
Just see here. I don't believe so.
Okay.
We were very happy with the amount of response that we got.
Now, why is it that some things get a big response and other things get no response?
So, Mr. Chair, I've heard from engineers and from the grapevine that it's because the project is interesting. Because engineers get stuck working on building, a little bridge or a culvert or something like that, and they really want to do something that's exciting and interesting, and this is exciting and interesting.
There you go.
That was what I heard.
And that's possibly quite true.
Okay. So the recommendation, folks, is that the contract for the Dalewood Dam Hazard Protection Potential Classification be awarded to GHD for a lump sum price of $39,255 plus HST, with an upset limit of $50,000, including applicable tax.
I'll move it.
Move it. Seconded by Dominique. Any other discussion at all, folks? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, strategic work plans.
Mr. Chair, the next couple of reports are basically presented with you, going back to Linda's earlier comment, with the information that I have available to me today. There's lots of crystal balling that we can do, but the next couple of months are really going to dictate our future moving forward. So, but that doesn't negate the fact that our City of London and the other municipalities and ourselves have to move forward in terms of budgeting and coming up with a plan. And a lot of this work I don't see as work that is going to just be thrown to the wind in a couple of months. It's all good base work for what we have to do moving forward. So the staff, even before all the Bill 108 and the different amendments to the Conservation Authority Act came out, we're already working on their strategic work plans for the next 4 years, anticipating that the City of London would be moving forward with a 4-year plan. And the way that those strategic work plans are developed is basically I go out and ask staff, what can we do with the funds that we have available, and knowing that our municipalities are strapped as well. What are we going to do as responsible natural resource managers? And so these are the strategic work plans that they've developed. There's a couple of key elements. You'll see the program area is listed at the top, and this is very much in keeping in terms of what we did for the last 4-year cycle, as well as what was presented in your orientation packages. So you'll see the program highlighted at the beginning. We've also highlighted the objectives of each program. And those objectives are really born out of the purpose of the Conservation Authorities Act. And it's important, I think, for yourselves to remember that the purpose of the Act hasn't been changed by this government. The purpose of the Act still remains to provide for the organization and delivery of programs and services that further the conservation, restoration, development, and management of natural resources in the watershed in Ontario. So we need to do that regardless of what the province sets out as our mandatory programs and services. So the staff really looked at that purpose that's established in the Act and came up with 5 objectives. And those are, I think, in keeping with some of the things that have been pushed by this government. Develop and maintaining programs and services that protect life and minimize property damage from natural hazards such as flooding and erosion. Maintaining and enhancing programs and services that improve the health of the watershed through collaborative, integrated, science-based approaches. Manage and protect authority-owned lands to support outdoor recreation opportunities. Promote a positive community profile of our programs and services and foster respect for the watershed and ensure effective and efficient delivery of our programs and services. So each one of the program areas, so this example is administration. The next section you'll see is objectives, and it will list what objectives of those 5 objectives is that program or service delivering for the authority. So in this instance with administration, it's promoting a positive community profile and ensuring we're effective and efficient in our delivery of programs and services. The next section you'll see in each strategic work plan is the standard deliverables. And see that these are the deliverables from 1 year to the next. It's the standard, it's the minimum that we need to do in each one of those programs. So, again, for administration, we need a board of directors. We're here to support that board of directors. The deliverables of 2020 to 2023, that's where you're going to see staff outline things that we think are priorities, that we think are should-haves being done in the watershed. But there are also things that we're aware of that will probably need to be scaled based on how things turn out in the next couple of months, and certainly will be scaled based on the direction that we get from the board in terms of where we're lying for a levy increase. So again, priorities for the next 4 years and the implementation of these items wouldn't necessarily have to be scaled on available funding and resources. And the speed of implementation, if at all, would be directed by the final budgets and board approval. I should also note that in terms of the strategic work plans that were provided in your advanced package, the GIS and IT, one is presented as Cliff basically developed it back when he was here with us. It will need to be edited as we move forward, depending on the direction that's provided for that position. And there will be a separate 4-year capital plan that will be presented in the fall, so the staff are still working on that. So deliverables in terms of 2020 to 2023, and again, these are things that can be scaled and would need to be scaled based on where we land with levy and again, how things fall out with Bill 108. But we need to further update and modernize our policies. One example is I'd like to establish a reserve policy. We want to work towards a paperless work environment and accounting system that requires IT support. So the motion earlier in the package will really help us develop that. We want to modernize our flood forecasting, cameras in the flood damage areas throughout the watershed for safer monitoring of our flood flows. We need to expand the rain gauge network so we have a better idea of what's happening throughout the entire watershed and introduce real-time data for the public. Again, that IT support that you just approved is going to go a long way in that. And Jen and I are going to be working on a funding proposal in the next week or so that will hopefully provide some funding for that as well. Website updates and enhancements, secure ongoing funding for the tree planting and stewardship programs will be a necessary target over the next 4 years. Modernizing our data collection and dissemination, sharing as much as we can with the public through our watershed report cards and other initiatives. We need to secure sustainable funding for the Environmental Youth Corps. We've seen great success with that program, and I think it's a key area in terms of building a sustainable future as well as empowering the youth to be able to deal with their environment in the future. Work with partners to enhance trail network for recreation use that matches the public expectations. This is something that we've been has been identified to us. The public wants more access to our trails for different uses such as mountain biking. We have the survey ongoing this summer to get a better perspective of how they want that, and that will inform decisions moving forward as well. And we need to initiate summer grooming of trails, and that will come out of the user feedback survey as well. So all of those initiatives, that's just a high level of some of the things that you'll see in those strategic work plans, but all of those will necessarily have to be scalable and can be scaled based on the direction that you provide us in terms of the budget. But in order to build the budget, I kind of need to look at a work plan to try to develop that. So what I'm asking for right now is that the draft 2020-2023 strategic work plans be accepted, and that staff use those work plans to develop a 4-year budget, 2020 to 2023, for discussion and presentation at the August 21st, 2019 full board meeting. So I don't want to be saying like you're approving these and that's the plan for the next 4 years, but it gives us a starting point and a place that we can begin the discussion and start looking at those different items and saying, okay, that seems to be a priority, we need to find money for that, or that's something that we can scale back.
Question, Linda?
No, I will move it so I can put the question on the floor.
Okay.
I'll move it,
Moved by Linda, seconded by Dennis.
and then I have a question.
Question.
So with this, and we do know that 108 is, you know, I mean, it's a working document at this particular time of which we don't know all the details. Do we have anywhere within this document where we can partnership with some of our neighboring conservation areas, and has that discussion taken place? You're better aware of how they're feeling as well. I mean, we all feel a bit under the gun right at the moment, but municipalities can't, and I don't think will tolerate large increases. I just don't think that's going to happen. We're all sitting with pretty tight budgets and a lot to do, and it certainly was mentioned a couple of times at our own council meeting. So Is there anywhere, Elizabeth, where we can find true partnerships out there that could help us with some of the budgetary mandatory things that we must do?
I think for us, I think you see in that deliverable list, there's a lot of things there that really rely on information technology, modernization, IT, GIS, those types of things. And that's what we're losing if we don't replace that GIS IT position. But at the same point, we're living in a different time than when I proposed that 4 years ago. So over the next, the summer, what I'm going to be working at is looking at my different partners and where can I establish shared services. I think if there's anything, that's where the possibility lies. I have some ideas right now that I'm working on. They're not at a stage where I can present to you today. But I hope that I would have a pretty good presentation or proposal for you in August or September in terms of meeting those deliverables that we were hoping to achieve with the IT supervisor, but doing it in a different way and a more scalable, more cost-efficient way.
And just supplemental to that, and I've said this before, and I don't mind saying it in public, I still see there's opportunities with our sister conservation area being so close that we're not doing things together, and I really still think strongly we should be exploring that. I think there's opportunities for us to approach them from time to time, and I know that they have the same constraints that we do, but I still think we've got to start doing this in a more effective way than what we have. And I realize that there is history there. I do, and I'm not dismissing it, but I'd like to start some new history and see if there's ways that we can actually partnership, even if it is with things like IT even. I'd certainly appreciate some sort of strategy, and certainly the chairs maybe sitting down together and having that discussion at some point in time. I'm just making the suggestion.
And I would suggest that those conversations, I think, to a certain extent, informally happen already. And nothing formally, of course, and not just in conservation areas, but in authorities, but in all governments. Everything, I think, everybody is talking about shared services, right?
We just need to step
Yes.
up.
Okay, Dennis, question?
Well, I was saying the deliverables for the GIS that actually mentioned to network with other CAs to fully utilize UA technology, so there is something there already, and I think it's an excellent idea, like for the GIS IT, that maybe that is something where we can do a partnership with the other CAs,
Be nice.
especially Catfish, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Joe?
Yeah, perfect. Elizabeth, this is exactly what we need to do, and a good 3 or 4 year outlook is exactly perfect. So, I don't envy you at the moment. There's a whole lot of organizations out there doing exactly the same thing, trying to predict the future. And I've been saying it a lot. I can't predict the future very well, so I just react really well. And so part of what you're going to deliver to us, to this board, is going to be what we'll have to react to after you've predicted the future. So a couple of questions based on that. One, just logistic one. August 21st is the last day of AMO, and many of us would not be available for a full authority meeting that day.
So
Would be an odd one.
then we should look at a rescheduled meeting.
Okay.
Maybe at the end of the meeting, we can compare schedules.
Okay, just thought I'd throw that out there because I just checked it and I know I'm not here. So
Okay.
another question is on the implement or the startup, what do we currently have for reserve policy? That may be a better question because you're asking. Do we have reserve based on our ownership, like campgrounds and stuff?
We have reserves, there's no policy. And so what I would like to do is clearly establish for you what each reserve, I'm gonna have to go back through historical records, so some were in existence before my time, but kind of go back and see exactly what the purpose was set up for. And then look at, I think, moving ahead, that's one of the I guess, the fall safes that you always have as reserves, but at the end of the day, once they're gone, so it's not something that we can look at long-term. But I think you need a better perspective of how much you can dip into them.
Please do.
or how you can use them effectively moving forward. So I have, I'm going to provide that for you in
Thank you.
terms of the next 4 years.
And if I can also add, the other side, another organization I also sit on, has a similar issue. And there's really only a couple of funders here, although there is a money-making piece with our own campgrounds. But the reserve funds are made up of what? Provincial funds, municipal levy funds, or our own funds generated. And from a municipal point of view, we're asking some other organizations right now, why are you taking our money and reserving it? Why don't you leave it with us? I mean, we'll maybe leave it in a KCCA reserve fund in the municipal, but if it's just the group of municipalities on a levy. So I just throw that out there to say, take that look at it too, is where's the best, whose money is it, and where's the best place for the reserve fund?
Right.
Right.
I can confidently say that if you go, I will go through that.
Right.
But that question has come up before about our reserves. And I'm like 90% sure that most of the funds that are currently in our reserves are not municipal levy.
Perfect.
That's been sitting there.
That's ideal.
We effectively use our campground reserves. Like your campground funds are funding all of your capital. So I don't think that's a possibility there, that we can harbor municipal levy and keep going and asking back for more.
Well, I hope not too, but that's why I brought it up, is so that we're looking at it with that lens.
Yeah, I will give you that better picture of what's
Okay.
happening here.
And then one other topic. Are you starting off with today and saying, here's what we currently spend and here's what our programs are, and what would the levy basis need to be to maintain those based on what we now know out of Bill 108? Or are we starting with a clean whiteboard, or are we starting with, here's all the really nice to-dos, and we want to do all those? I mean, I'm hoping you're starting with a good range of each of those things. Like, do we really need to do this? Can we do more of this? Can we do less of this? And does that match our current levy situation? I mean, all I can share with you is, having met with a number of municipal politicians from Southern Ontario this week, there's not a whole lot of appetite for increased levies, just so you know. We've made it pretty clear to the province that if you're cutting, we're cutting. Right? We're not picking up the slack. So if you will, I think from a conservation authority, there may be a little bit more appetite for some flexibility on that. So let's, I just want to, from an overall guidance point of view, as you look at programming, that statement's made. So.
Just to comment back to Joe's piece and to know how part of the history here, and I know you're as a newer member.
Oh, yes.
We have what I consider one of the most frugal EDs and general managers in the conservation area. Certainly, we have not overstepped. There have been reserves used when needed and not before, but always with great thought. So you can rest assured that we have staff who are very conscientious of those levies, and certainly we did get an earful a few years back from London, certainly when they want a multi-year budget and all that kind of thing. So anyways, I'm just saying to the newer members, we've been in very good hands at this point, and I like to think that we're in a very good position at this point as well.
Great, thank you. Dominique?
Mr. Chair, sort of picking up on what's being said already, and I realize it's a catch-22 between planning versus budget and which one do you do first. But and I think it's a situational decision, and I'm wondering, we know the kind of context we're entering. There's going to be a lot of cuts everywhere. So I'm wondering if we should not be having the next item discussion first and setting a target for levy increases, which I think should be a zero increase. But for example, we're already getting some information from London where they would like to see a 1.5. And so then why not agree on whatever that number is in those scenarios? And then work backwards from there, because I'm hearing in this that everything is scalable. So that means to me we should be in a position to, once we agree on a potential levy target, then create a plan, a strategic plan and a series of objectives that actually match that. Because right now, I'm hearing that it's kind of it's a bit of a wish list, because I think words like should have, these are the things we should be doing. They're not sorted yet into absolute wants and needs. And plus, we don't have the information of the one way. So, and then why not work backwards from a budget?
From what Linda said, and I think from the conversations that we've heard, I think what we're looking at here is the roadmap, right? Where each department would like to go, giving them the framework, that then we turn around and talk about our next report and decide on what our levy goal is going to be. I think this first, like, I understand what you're saying, but I think until you have these things in place and sort of a format to follow, you really can't talk about, like, you know, for example, the whole notion of how this is organized, and the fact that you have standard deliverables and then you have the deliverables down the road. We don't know in a year where we're going to be sitting. We do know that we have to get there somehow. Okay, this is giving us the opportunity to get there, and then we discuss what the City of London has asked for and what other expectations are from the other municipalities, and then decide on what our levy goal will be for the next year, so that we can get to this time. So in June next year, we're going to be sitting here talking about our funding. What did the province, what funding are we getting from the province for our operations, right? We don't know what that's going to be, and those in municipal politics will say, you guys, it's just a crapshoot, you don't know.
Yeah, so
But this gives us a known, this is the known part of it.
well, although I understand that,
Right.
however, if I read the next report correctly, I think the plan is being used to come up with the percentage. So for example, the board is being given options of, 3% or 10%.
Right.
And I think that was based on using the strategic priorities. So it has been used to create this 3%, but we didn't agree on 3%, so why not work backwards and say that let's agree that 3% is at 1.5 is at 0, and then already tweak the plan. So I disagree. I think the plan is already being used to frame a budget and to recommend to the board in order to deliver on this. We cannot do 1.5%, we must do 3% or maybe 10.
Mr. Chair, if I may. So the strategic work plans as they've laid out, I think, is the communication from your staff to you as what we feel as responsible Conservation Authority employees that should be looked at in the next 4 years. Right, so that is, if you want to be responsible managers, this is what your staff is recommending to them.
Yeah.
You have your standard deliverables, we've got to do that. And then the 20 to 23 are, again, what we think needs to be done locally over the next 4 years, or should be done. The 3%, I can't do all of those things that are in the 20 to 23. So that's why I'm saying this is what the staff think should be done. If you say 3%, then I'm going to go back to those strategic work plans and I'm going to highlight what can be done in 3% and what has to come off and move to 2021 or 2022. A lot of those things are going to keep getting pushed down.
Right.
And so the last 4-year plan, these strategic work plans changed every year we went forward, right? So you're going to land on 5% because of this, this, and this. And then I'm going to go back and we're going to look at those strategic plans and I'm like, okay, at 5% board, then I'm taking this one off and I'm delaying it to 2023, 24. So it very is chicken before the hen, which one do you look at? I'm just trying to be responsible and upfront to you to say, this is what staff thinks needs to be done. You're fully aware, this is what your staff is saying needs to be done. Now you take that information and you say, you're looking at that, I'm a board member, I'm thinking of the watershed and its health, but we need to come in at 3 or 4%. Staff, go back and look at your plan, reevaluate it, show me what comes off, or what you can do. Like, there's some things there that I know, okay, if you're gonna give me a target of 3%, then I've gotta go back and I've gotta work my butt off to find matching funds, funding proposals, something, if my staff are saying that that's a priority, and then I'm gonna bring it back up to you. So to go and say, okay, well, let's just set the target and then go back to the strategic work plan and reevaluate it, to me is saying, okay, we're gonna do what we're going to let money decide what this watershed needs. I'm trying to present to you what this watershed needs. What funds do we have available now? Okay, I'm going to go back to my watershed and tell you what you can do with that. You'd help me to decide what you want to take off the list.
Okay.
That's how I've tried to lay it out. I understand,
Yeah.
you know, we've been sitting here and we've been doing the same thing. There's a lot of things, but it's
zero-based.
what comes first.
Yeah, and thanks, Elizabeth. I think that sort of clarifies your thought process as far as going in. I think that's important. Okay, any other comments about this part of it? Seeing none, can we get a motion then?
I already moved it.
Right, okay, sorry, seconded, okay. Oh, that's right, sorry. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, so now let's take a look at part 2.
So, moving into levy projections, as I mentioned before, City of London is always out ahead in terms of our watershed and budgets. And they've come out with a target for their council of 2.7% average annual increase. And again, kind of presenting that same scenario, there's certain projects that they're going to have to scale at the 2.7%, and then going back to their councils and saying, okay, what are you going to take off the list? So in terms of boards and commissions, we've been set a target of 1.5%. The submission needs to be to the City of London staff by August 2nd, 2019. I've talked with the City of London staff as well as the other CCAs have been talking with City of London staff. They understand the situation that we're in. One, it's always been a struggle for us because our budget needs to be board approved. That doesn't happen to February. City of London wants their budget approved by December. So it's always this, yes, this is what we think we're going to land, but it may change when board approval finally comes. This, we have the added scenario of Bill 108 is in existence, and so lots of things could happen in that time frame. So the city staff and us have come to the conclusion, again, that we just have to go with the information that we have available to us now, knowing that that may change. So we're submitting, looking to submit based on current knowledge, and because it is a multi-year budget review, it was mentioned in your advanced package, that still those budgets are reviewed annually. So if something happens and we need more funds or less funds, then we go back and we reevaluate that with the City of London. So based on that 1.5% target, what I'm suggesting to you is that basically that is low for us to deal with some of the funding scenarios that we're dealing with right now. So scenario 1 is a 3% minimum levy increase for 2020. This absorbs the $58,000 cut to the Natural Hazard Management Grant, but assumes the remaining transfer payment plan is in place for 2020. It has a cost of living increase to all expenditures in keeping with projections suggested by the City of London. So I'm working with the City of London staff to get projections for cost of living on everything from hydro, wages, all of those things. It does, and I don't think we can lose sight of the fact that at 3% we're losing a full-time equivalent. So it was advantageous timing that we had that vacancy, but that doesn't negate the fact that we're losing a full-time person. And I'm having to find a replacement for a full-time staff in terms of cost-sharing services and whatever I can establish to meet the goals of that person. So the introduction of an IT support contract is in there as well. And gets to the proposal that I'm not quite there yet, but I've been working on in terms of GIS services provided in-house with potentially additional training to staff that we have here, or GIS services outsourced as needed with possible cost-sharing partnerships to be explored. So if you look at that 3%,
Can I just ask a question? Just on that piece. I know that we were offering that mapping service to other folks
right,
as a revenue generator.
Yeah.
Do you remember how much revenue we had generated out of that position to date?
I don't remember to date, I'd have to go back, it was significant, but the goal on a yearly basis was 25,000, and he exceeded that in each year. That he
Yes,
was-
and I remember that.
Yes,
So is it still possible to fund that position with perhaps what he's making, or he or she is making, or to cover the cost of, their salary, that kind of thing? Is that still possible, Elizabeth?
I don't think that in terms of absorbing a $58,000 cut and trying to meet member municipalities' wants for limited levy increases, that we could fund a position solely funding themselves, if that's the question. I think what I'm working towards now is, in-house services, looking at possibilities to maintain our ability to fly our UAVs, and looking at for some fee for services back from that, that would help, keep our levy down, but not in any way being able to fund a full-time or even a part-time contract position.
I'm just expressing some concern because we do have some investment at this point in time, especially with equipment, which outdates itself very, very quickly. But I'm aware that we're sitting with some equipment that's just sitting there at the moment, not generating anything. And when we go back and we think about how we were doing that position in the first place, we talked about all of that, how it would pay for itself. So anyways, continue on with what you're doing. I just think it's a shame because it was genuinely working well, and I think there was lots to be had out there, and I think there still is. So I'm interested in you really following that one up. And
Yeah, I think my overall goal is to not to erode the programs and services that we have existing any further. And in terms of looking at that GIS IT position.
I still think it should be separate. I'm sorry, I realize you have wonderful staff behind you, but I still think it's a separate position. I just do. It is the way I favor it. His expertise was what it is, I mean, he took a lot of training on that, so. But anyway, enough said, just an opinion.
Thank you.
So again, 3% is basically on the numbers that I have run right now, the lowest that I feel comfortable with based on the projections that I have right now. And in terms of the priorities and things that you see listed in the 20 to 23, the 3% is very minimal and is just looking at, as Linda said, trying to save that as much of the GIS services as we can. And this also assumes that the capital expenditures would still be funded through the campground profits. Key to this proposal will be also looking through the summer months, looking at program reviews in terms of the tree planting, environmental monitoring review for potential funding opportunities or additional fee for services. And as I mentioned already, a reserve review, making recommendations for measured utilization to keep that 3%. And at 3% in terms of perspective for each member municipality, I did do the levy sheet that was included in your advanced package based on a 3%, so you could see the impact to each one of your member municipalities.
Joe?
So London has asked for 1.5 and we're not even trying to get there? Is that the what we're saying to them?
I'm saying
I
without.
mean, I'm not saying it.
No, I'm saying, what I've said to the City of London staff, if I hadn't had the natural hazard management grant reduction, 1.5% would probably be more achievable with some, fine tuning. So if you want to think of it as 1.5%, I believe the way that some of the other CAs are going to be presenting it is here's your cost of living increase, member municipalities, and here's the cost to the provincial downloading. So if you look at my projection for 3%, I would be fairly safe in saying 1.5% is cost of living, 1.5% is dealing with the leftover provincial downloading.
But as I said going in, municipalities that I've spoken to, and including my own, are saying, we're not taking the cut. That we're not just going to transfer the cost to the local municipality from the province. So if the province has suggested that the cut is at that point, or funds that they can't afford to spend is at that point, municipalities, I mean, I put on that hat, I'm sorry, I know I'm at the KCCA board, and I should be talking only the board things, but municipalities are saying, we're not picking up the difference. We don't have the difference. The ratepayers in St. Thomas, London, Malahide, wherever else, have not said, please charge us more for these services. They've not said that, and we're saying no. So I think we have to at least start. If the cost of living is 1.5, we need to at least start there. Tell us what that looks like. As a municipal leader, we'll make the decision, can I afford more than that? Right? I think we give you cost of living, but anyway, that's my point from St. Thomas.
Dennis?
And just with that, I think the City of London, they're endorsing their 2.7 increase. And
On their total.
On their total levy, and yet they're asking all boards and commissions to come in at 1.5.
Yeah.
So they're actually probably at a 3% or higher increase, and they're holding the gun to the conservations and other boards, asking them to do 1.5%. It's ridiculous. I don't think that the City of London should be asking for a 1.5 from all boards. If they're 2.7, they should be asking 2.7 for all their boards and commissions. That's the way I feel.
So I agree with Dennis. I don't like having a gun held to my head. I think we'll see what Elizabeth's going to present back to us. We're going to see what is possible. We take it from there and make a decision on it then. So I'm waiting for that information to come back. I think she's absolutely right in where we're starting. I never believe, and my apologies to my colleague down the table, in a 0% increase because there's always cost of living and a number of other things. So I don't like to get into those behind situations where you have to catch up 5 years down the road. So I would like to see what's presented. I think there's an opportunity first to hear what Elizabeth has to say in a presentation, then look at it. If we can find some other things that we take off the list that we may have to, I don't know that, then we do it then. So I agree with Dennis. I'm not having a gun held to my head just because one municipality says it's got to be this. Let's do what's best for the conservation area first. Always, let's do what's best for the conservation area.
Bill?
Yeah, I would appreciate, through you, Mr. Chair, when we have a list of stuff out there with some kind of little ranking beside them based on the Conservation Authority's mandate. So, we've got 7 points and basically rank them, and then that helps the members kind of decide the importance of each one. They're all important, but if it gets to the point where we have to crunch and eliminate, then at least we have a list that we can do it in a responsible way. So,
Tony?
Yeah, just to follow up on, when I say 0%, it doesn't mean necessarily falling behind. I've worked in government before where the direction I was given by my board was to hit 0. In order to meet 0, it just meant that I had to make tough decisions and eliminate services or programs because I didn't want to fall behind on wages, because I agree, there's no point in freezing wages, you just play catch up and spend more later on. but it had to, when I was told 0, I made it work because it was not an option. It was not, well, no, I can't, because in order to provide best practices in my field, I need 3% or I need 10%. I was told 0 and I made 0 happen through very tough decisions. I made the, as you were describing, you would do, and I think you were alluding to, you share, you say, fine, you want 0 or you want 1 or you want 3, whatever. Here are the consequences. Here's what I will not do. So then the board makes an informed, or the municipalities make an informed decision. But I think it's important to show what does 0 look like, what does 1.5 look like? Because we need to show that we are in tune, that we are partners with the municipalities. And we're not, as my colleagues have said, we're not going to take the downloads and pass it on and just keep passing the buck. So it is possible without falling behind. It just means making choices between best practices and must.
I think everyone has their own personal opinions on 0, and if it's 0, then you are falling behind because everything goes up 1.5, so you're falling behind 1.5. Okay, any other comments at all? Questions? Okay, Elizabeth, was there anything else you wanted to add at all?
Well, there's 2 other scenarios.
Do we want to look at those other scenarios or not?
I
Gently leading in, by the
Yeah,
way.
but before I leave scenario 1, I can't reiterate enough that at 3%, we are making choices. We are losing a
Put them out here, let us
full-time, we are losing a full-time equivalent. If you're going, if you're asking me to look at scenarios going down past those 3%, then there's other cuts. Scenario 2, 10% levy increase, that's what I'm looking at. It's absorbing. I think, that there may be a reality that you're looking at the rest of the natural hazard management grant being taken away as well. So there's the last 2 scenarios are you're absorbing the $58,000 natural hazard management grant, but assuming the transfer payment remains in place and reposting the GIS IT supervisor position, and cost of living increases to all expenditures. That's about 10% levy increase if you wanted to look at that. Scenario 3 is 10% levy increase for 2020, and that would be option 1 that I just presented, but loss of the entire natural hazard management grant in 2020. And I hear the board's response that they're not interested in absorbing that provincial download, but I think it gives you an idea of the amount of funds that you would be looking at removing from your budget. So if you're looking at that scenario, it's like $100,000 that we would be looking at finding in the budget. And I hear the response from the board that I haven't listed all of the programs and services that might come off on that. But I thought it was important to try to give you scope today in terms of what you're looking at moving forward. And again, I need some level to shoot for.
Joe, you have a question?
Well, yeah, this is all on the expenditure side, and I get it, and that's the hardest part to do on budget. Is there any move on the revenue side? In your mind, are you thinking any move on the revenue side? Because we're getting cost of living on the cost side, are we getting cost of living on our revenue side?
Those are all things that we'll look through the budget.
That's all I'm asking too. And is there other unknown or unthought of revenue side issues, sponsorships and other things that we could also go out and ask for, or covering of expenditures? So I just throw them out as a fellow who does a whole lot of these budgets, saying sometimes I can't balance the downside, but I sure can increase the upside, and then won't miss. So, yeah, okay.
Any other comments at all? Bill?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I just sometimes get caught, I think we get caught up in percentages. I also like that comparison of the dollar values. You say, oh, this percentage, but really translate into this dollar. So is this worth this amount of dollars to keep, or?
I'm looking at Middlesex Center there, $451.
Okay.
that's what, a 3% increase,
You
right?
cover the dollar.
Yeah.
So, if you put it into that, I agree with you 100% though. Okay, any other comments? Ralph, you haven't said a whole lot?
No, I'm listening, and I'm, I don't represent, I do represent London, but I'm not on London Council, so I can't really speak to their issues, and I think Bill is in the same position.
Well, I think we sit here, we are on the board of directors for Kettle
Yes,
Creek.
we are.
And as we sit here, we represent Kettle Creek,
We do.
right? And supplementaries represent the municipalities in which we come from. So we have to think, so Kettle Creek has to be your number one priority here.
Exactly.
And then, if inevitability happens, then inevitability happens. But we aren't there yet, and there's a little bit of water to go under the bridge yet, in my opinion.
Just a little, it's flood season.
I think the water level's up. Okay, so with that in mind, we're looking at a recommendation, Elizabeth?
Mr. Chair, I did put a recommendation in the advance package, but I do need some direction today. If I'm hearing the response from the board members, what I'd be prepared to do is continue to build a budget on 3%, but that would show, I guess, cuts that are on the table if you choose to go below 3%.
So I'll move that, we're given that direction. Would you prefer that it's a motion or prefer that it's direction? Which do you prefer? Motion or direction?
Motion.
Motion? All right, I'll make the
Moved by
motion.
Linda, is it seconded?
Is
By-
that-
Oh, question, Dennis?
No, I'll second it first.
Seconded by Dennis, okay, any comments, Dennis?
Is that for a 4-year period, 3% over 4 years? So
Well-
the city of London, we can set a recommendation.
Each year going, or?
I'm not sure that you're doing it for
3% would be for 2020.
2020.
And if you look at your advance reports, I didn't get to this, but based on projections and, all of those other things, I was looking at 5% as an initial target for those rest of those years, with the aim that in terms of refining projections, refining revenues, and as all of those things come in, staff, are dedicated to trying to look to get down the rest of those 4 years to 3%.
Okay.
Okay.
Moved and seconded, any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Horrendous job.
And Elizabeth, we're also here to help. This isn't just us saying this is bad, do it this way. If there's suggestions you think you can get from any of our municipalities on a better way or another way, please ask us that too. We have some of the resources to help do some of that too.
And we have to remember that you guys have the expertise. You know where you're coming from, where we, who aren't directly involved, aren't, right? But, that whole thing about we are a board of directors here to address our needs, I think is very important. Okay, June 2019 Planning and Regulations Activity Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a summary of Planning Act support and Section 28 permits was in your advance package. Nothing necessarily noteworthy to highlight unless there's questions of the members. We're just looking for receipt of the report.
Any questions at all about that report?
Okay.
Okay, motion to receive, Bill, seconded by Dennis, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, so that ends our regularly scheduled programming. It's now time for closed comment.
Just a couple of comments, just that I thought of it after, but back to the public meeting, the next Tuesday. Is it possible to record it for people who can't attend it?
That's already been raised by staff. We have a meeting coming up with the municipality of Central, and that was going to be one of the things that we discussed. So it's a strong, I would say, I don't see the reason why we
Sure,
couldn't.
not everybody can.
And before we go close, let's just deal with our future meeting, the August 21st meeting.
And I have one more question.
Oh, okay, sorry, Donna, go ahead.
My second point was, I find the PowerPoint slides really useful. They're a nice complement to the agenda package. And also sometimes there's new information in the PowerPoint slides. So for example, the quote, the additional quote, because I understand the PowerPoint comes after. So open to suggestion, perhaps, one suggestion would be to include the PowerPoint slides in the minutes. Or, like I said, I'm thinking out loud, but open to suggestion. But somehow I would like the PowerPoint slides to be part of the record of those meetings, because I do believe they provide good summaries in some cases, or provide additional information.
We include them, the PowerPoints are archived internally with the minutes, but if you're asking if they can be posted with the minutes online, I don't see why not. When you do post PowerPoints though, some of the, in PDF, some of the connectivity or formatting is lost, but it would be PDF format, just as long as you're acknowledging that some of that is lost.
So simply posting a link in the minutes to another file.
We would do the minutes and we would do the PowerPoint, so there would be minutes,
Because it would
PowerPoint,
create a
and a
huge,
video.
would create a huge,
It would create a huge file, so
Right.
we'd separate, probably separate them out.
We'll probably separate them out, like, so you can look at the PowerPoint, or you can look at the video, you can.
Okay.
maybe we
Those
can
were my 2 points.
examine that. Okay, August 21st. I understand that some of us will be going to Ottawa, some of you will be going to Ottawa, I will not. First time in a long time. So we're looking at another date for the August 21st meeting.
How many days is email through?
It ends on that day.
Yes,
but-
we will start on the 18th.
We-
So I'm just saying, is the next day gonna be do you need recuperation or
We have to be home.
Thursday the 22nd, yes, that would be too close probably.
too close?
What about the next week?
The 28th is the Wednesday in the next week, and right now that's a fairly clear week, but I hate doing that to people, because sometimes that's a clear week from a council point of view too, but if it's the best we got, it's the best we got, I'll take the 28th. You go with the 28th?
Yeah.
I have something on the 28th.
Okay, going back to
So-
acting that out.
That's the only day that week that I have something on.
Tuesday of that?
Tuesday the 27th?
Going back, hang on.
Albion County Council.
Okay,
Thursday that.
29th?
Thursday the 30th.
29th.
Yeah, Thursday's the 29th.
Oh, sorry, Thursday the 29th.
Mr. Chair, if I can we move it to the first week of September? The last week of August, I know some staff still have vacation planned.
Yeah, it's a,
It's the first week of school, all that jazz. If it has to be, it has to be, we'll make it work, but if there is any opening for the September,
So we're talking September 4th.
September 4th or something like that.
Are we okay with September 4th?
Or will we forward
Just checking.
to July, the 14th of August, a week earlier?
We can do that as well,
The 14th of August?
yeah.
I'm sorry, we're going back to the 14th of
Well,
August?
Dennis suggested the 14th of August versus.
It was good, it was good for me also, the 14th of August rather than in the Labor Day, but being cognizant of what Elizabeth just said about staffing, which one do you like better of those two, Elizabeth? Because I'm okay with either way.
Yeah, 14th.
Can I just do the four, can I look in terms of the, I can't pull up the staff's vacation schedule right now, but the
That's why you need that IT thing.
yeah, the 14th works or the 28th works.
Okay,
And can I confirm, if that works with members?
28th.
right now works with me either of those days.
Well, I would have to check with my social worker convener for the 28th.
The 14th or, sorry, what?
The 4th of September.
Or the 4th of September.
Yeah. Either of those.
Okay, I will
Second.
confer with the staff vacation schedule and then confirm out by email.
Okay,
By the end of
anybody,
this week,
Okay.
okay?
problems with that at all?
Yeah, perfect, that works for me.
Sounds good.
Cha-ching. Okay, so we need a motion to go into closed meeting for a very brief meeting. Ralph, Dominique, all in favor? Thank you. Thanks, staff. Staff notch. Okay, so now we're back into open. I need a motion to proceed with the direction. Bill? Seconder? Dennis? All in favor? Perfect, okay? And Ralph, you're making a motion there.
I've gotta go.
Okay.
The lunch?
Don't want to be late.
Motion for once, there we go. Okay, so we're done.